Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, pioneers of behavioral science, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's not every day that the world's leading minds gather to talk about how small shifts, defaults, choices, frames can move entire systems. But if there's a place for this conversation, it's here in Abu Dhabi. And this moment exists because of His Highness Sheikh Riyad bin Mohammed bin Zayed, who sees behavioral science not as a side project, but as a serious lever for national building. And the UAE Behavioral Science Group hasn't just applied insights, it's reshaped how behavioral science evolves in a world that is changing faster than our assumptions can keep up. But let me ask you something. When was the last time you struggled with something? Like really struggled? Not I can't find the TV remote kind of struggle, or the Wi-Fi is too slow kind of struggle. I mean the kind of struggle that makes you rethink everything. Rethink your habits, your beliefs, your limits, and forces you to grow. And here's something that we don't say enough. Struggle is not the enemy. It's the architect of resilience. Because I want you to know, and maybe some of you are thinking, isn't this a behavioral science conference? Aren't we here to make choices easier, not harder? Yes and no. For years, we've focused on removing friction, making good choices effortless. But what happens when the scaffolding disappears? What happens when the nudge fades, when the world shifts, when no one is nudging you anymore? We've spent the last decade learning how to make choices easier. Now, we must learn how to make people stronger. And this is where the next great frontier of behavioral science lies, not in making choices easier, not in removing friction, but in doing something far more powerful, helping people build the muscle to navigate life even when no one is guiding them. And in essence, it's about shaping stronger people, not through control, but through capacity. And I love the word capacity. A very dear professor, Ron Hivitz, introduced me to the concept of adaptive capacity, which is the ability to adjust, adapt, and thrive in the face of uncertainty, especially when rules change, when nudges disappear, and when there's no more defaults. But adaptive capacity is not about bouncing back. It's about growing forward, even when the path is unclear and the guideposts are gone. So it's what basically turns short-term behavior into long-term capability. Not just helping people have or follow better habits. Adaptive capacity is about giving them the ability and helping them to build their own habits, even when the system isn't there to help them. So basically, it's a shift from being guided to being your own guide. And that's the distinction between nudging and adaptation. Because sometimes we design an intervention and it looks like it works until we stop watching. So let me tell you a small story with the problem with only nudging. A university wanted students to take the stairs instead of escalators. So they nudged them. They put up posters, they even put about the health benefits of taking the stairs, they painted motivational signs, they even installed, the cute piano stairs that played music with each step. And guess what? It worked for 1 month. And then the novelty wore off and people went back to the escalator. Why? Because the nudge was fun, but it did not create a habit. It did not change their mindset. It did not change their identity. It made the choice easier, yes, but it didn't make them stronger. There was no long-term character change. So that's the trade-off. A nudge that simplifies can spark behavior, but it does not build capacity. It creates dependency. If the behavior disappears when the nudge disappears, did we ever really change anything? We removed the friction, but we also removed responsibility. Because if all that we've done is steer the choice without strengthening the chooser, we haven't built resilience. We've built reliance. And in a world that is growing unpredictable every single day, that's not just a design flaw, it's a huge risk. But okay, let me be clear. Building capacity does not mean walking away and abandoning people. Support still matters, design still matters, nudging still matters, because the opposite extreme of leaving people to figure it out on their own, no design, no nudge, no guidance, is just as flawed. You can't remove the scaffolding before people are ready to stand. And so this brings me to the problem with only adaptation. Take personal finance. For years, we've believed and assumed if you taught people how to budget, how to save, how to invest, they'd make smart financial decisions. They did not. Not because they weren't smart, but because knowledge or information isn't transformation. People are overwhelmed. They procrastinated. They avoided hard decisions. So you can throw someone into the deep and tell them to swim, tell them, or inform them, but that doesn't mean they will float. So where does this leave us? What is the next frontier of behavioral science? It's somewhere in between, where nudging meets adaptation, where the best intervention doesn't just steer choices. They shape the kind of person who continues to make those choices long after the prompt is gone, long after the nudge fades. Because the real power of a nudge isn't what it gets someone to do once. It's who it helps them become. And let me show you what I mean. It's not enough to nudge someone to open a savings account. We must help them see themselves as someone who plans ahead, as someone who believes in the discipline and the dignity of financial foresight, in the power of saving. It's not enough to get someone to recycle once. We must foster the identity of a steward that outlasts the sustainability campaign, someone who protects the planet even when it's inconvenient, not just habit, but meaning. It's not enough to nudge my son to eat a healthy meal. I must help him internalize health as a part of who he is, as someone who fuels his body with care, and he does it even when no one's watching. Because when the nudge builds adaptive capacity, it leads to a shift in identity. And then, that's what happens. The behavior doesn't just change, so you get their behavioral change, but the behavior lasts. So the best nudges don't just smooth the path. They build the legs that walk it. The best nudges build adaptive capacity because they build decision makers. They don't just change choices. So when a nudge teaches, when it shifts and changes the way someone sees themselves, and when the effect lives long after the program is gone, that's when we moved from behavioral change to identity shift. So the best interventions do three things. They teach something, they change and shift how someone sees themselves, and they last longer than after we've left the room. That's what makes behavior stick. That's what changes influence into transformation. So when nudging marries adaptation, we don't just shape behavior, we shape character. And that's the moment when behavioral science becomes something more, not just a tool for design, but it can become a force for human development. So here's the real shift that we all need to make. Not in shaping action in the moment, but building capacity for a lifetime, capacity to make wise decisions. And the real question is no longer what behavior did we shift? It's what kind of person did we help shape? Because in a world that we're in, that is constantly changing, and in the world that is coming, the scaffolding will disappear, the defaults will fade, and the world will ask more of us than ever before. And in that world, the nudges that teach will be more powerful than the nudges that trigger. And behavioral science that shapes identity will last longer than science that nudges choice. Because surface behavioral change might look impressive, but only identity-driven action stands the test of time. And maybe Dr. Michael Halsworth is with us here today, and he'll remind us, he'll say the question isn't just to ask, did it work? It's why did it work? For whom? And did it build identity, or did it just prompt behavior? And what does it teach us about what must come next? And if we can answer that, we won't just refine behavioral science. I think we will all be able to redefine its purpose. And this isn't just about clever tweaks in design. It's a foundational shift in direction, because the most meaningful change isn't what we do to people. It's what we build within them. And design matters. Yes, it's not enough. But the real power, again, is about what remains when the design disappears. So the legacy of behavioral science is going to be stronger people, not smarter defaults. It's more capable people. And the real measure of behavioral science or this field's success is not just how many habits we've sparked, it's how many humans we've strengthened, not how many choices we've shaped, but how many people we equipped to choose wisely when no one is watching. And we're not here to shape behavioral alone. We're here to build societies and communities that are resilient, that are reflective, that are ready, that are more capable, that are able to stand stronger when the ground shifts. Because the future won't belong to those with the best design paths. It'll belong to those who know how to build one when none of these paths exist. And the long-term game isn't about getting our people to follow the best prompt. It's about building people who can function and thrive and lead. And those who have internalized the tools and principles, because internalization is the outcome of adaptive capacity. And because behavior only lasts when it aligns with who we believe we are and what we believe matters. And the future will be built by those who turned behavior into character, nudges into identity, and habits into who they are. Thank you so much.